The Yakuza series is incredibly special to me. When I finished Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, the most recent game, and finally figured out why it was called Infinite Wealth, I cried a lot. And it's since influenced a lot of how I've been handling drama in my friend groups and just resolving conflicts in general, all while also paralleling this huge personal journey of mine that I teased at a couple videos back. It's been a while since I felt like I was affected, changed by a work of art in some way, but Infinite Wealth managed it. I feel like a very real personal journey of mine has been so incredibly described by this game. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth tells the story of Kasuga Ichiban and Kiryu Kazuma teaming up to take down a handful of people who are trying to revive the Yakuza and destroy the protagonist's reputations, all with the intention of making sure that all of the ex-Yakuza floating around Kanto don't get the opportunity to atone for their crimes and lead normal civilian lives now that the Kanto Yakuza clans have been dissolved. Ichiban's motivations in this are to live up to the dreams of his father and help to rehabilitate every last Yakuza member, and Kiryu's motivation is to save a little girl who's caught up in the conflict and to sacrifice himself for this cause. Essentially, while he's still alive at the ending of this game, he spent the entire story intent on giving his life to Ichiban's cause, so that all of the ex-Yakuza could end their criminal careers gracefully. He wants to atone for the sins of every last Yakuza member in Kanto, because as the fourth chairman of the Tojo clan, he had the opportunity to fix so many problems with the Yakuza, a whole 8 games earlier, but he didn't. Kiryu's atonement for the sins of the Yakuza definitely isn't the first thing that comes to mind when most people think of this game. All of the flair in this game really comes from Ichiban's insane reality. He basically dissociated into being a video game character at some point during his prison sentence at the start of Yakuza 7, the first mainline game he appeared in. So he sees all the random goons he fights as JRPG monsters, and he sees these brutal street battles with Yakuza as cutesy, turn-based video game fights. When we're playing Ichiban, these games turn into unreliable narrator stories, where the line between Ichiban's video game fantasy and reality starts to blur, with plot lines like, oh, it turns out Ichiban actually does have the blood of the king flowing through his veins, being super integral to Yakuza 7's story. It's entirely possible that Ichiban just played too much Dragon Quest as a kid and essentially experienced his entire life through the lens of video game mechanics. You could totally make the argument that Kiryu would never say that, but that line is just Ichiban seeing his life as a video game. Ichiban's insane adventure through Honolulu is only half of this game, though. I just needed to get that character establishing stuff out of the way before I move on to Kiryu's story. We'll touch on Ichiban at the end, don't worry. Over the course of 8 entire games where we played as Kiryu, each one packed with side content and heartbreaking narratives, people who played through the entire series up until this point will have a lifetime of memories with this guy. We watched him go to prison for a murder he didn't commit, be betrayed by his sworn brother. He became the leader of the Tojo clan only to give it all up so that his adopted daughter could live a peaceful life. He fell in love with a woman, only to lose her once the passion of their time together wore thin. He ran an orphanage in Okinawa. Then he had to spend years hiding from his new family for their own safety. He fought 100 men by himself one time. Then, ultimately, he faked his death, as that was the only thing that could assure the kids in the orphanage his family could stay safe. He struck a deal with a faction called the Daidoji, who helped to make his death official, and up until Ichiban's quest put Kiryu back into the spotlight and reignited that fire in his belly, Kiryu had committed to spending his final years in quiet, regretful contemplation at a Daidoji temple, occasionally doing petty jobs for them whenever they demanded it, ready to live the rest of his life under aliases like Joryu or Suzuki Taichi. It all sounds pretty insane and ridiculous when you lay out the events of Kiryu's life like this. It's way more than any one man could ever realistically experience in life. But the simple fact of the matter is that all of this happens over like almost 1,000 hours of gameplay and 19 years of game releases. All of these stories were given a ton of time to breathe, and so each one is even more emotionally charged and tragic than the last, while all still feeling believable. The simple fact of the matter is that, however implausible Kiryu's story is, it's an incredibly emotional one, and one that's super easy to get invested in, especially once it's been a part of your life for long enough to reach this point in the series. We've lived out an entire life as Kiryu, and now he has cancer. That's what Kiryu's story in this game really revolves around. He has cancer, and he's probably going to die soon. He's decided not to get his cancer treated, as he needs to be in peak physical form if he's going to complete this last mission and atone for the sins of the Yakuza. After helping Ichiban in Hawaii for a bit, Kiryu's condition worsens, and he has to be taken back to Yokohama to rest and take things a little bit easier than he would be able to do with Ichiban. While, yes, we do plenty of fighting as Kiryu in Yokohama and uncover some conspiracies and all of the other Yakuza stuff, this half of the game is focused on Kiryu creating a bucket list, reminiscing on all the good times that he's had over the years and doing all the things he needs to do so that he can die with fewer regrets. For Kiryu's entire life, he's been incredibly selfless and unwilling to lean on others for help in all but the pettiest of ways. He's been this stoic warrior, this platonic ideal of a Yakuza for his entire life, but now he simply isn't strong enough to handle this situation on his own. His body's limited by cancer, and his mind is clogged up with a lifetime of regrets. See, in every Yakuza game, there's an excuse for why Kiryu loses so much of his strength. In reality, it's just that these games usually revolve around upgrading your character and becoming more and more powerful. But whether it's because Kiryu just stopped training for a couple years, or he was sent to prison for a decade, or whatever, there's always a kind of flimsy justification for why Kiryu starts out each game at level 1. This man has learned the exact same moves from Komaki Soro or Sasuke 5 times over the course of this series. Here in Infinite Wealth, Kiryu has lost a ton of his strength at the start of this game, only this time it's explained as being because of all of his regrets. He's been sitting in the Daidoji temple just stewing over everything he wished he could have done differently in life, all of the things he blames himself for a couple years now, and it's made him weaker. While, yes, we level Kiryu up in combat like usual, the main way that we make Kiryu stronger is by going to all of these different points all over Yokohama and letting Kiryu reminisce on the joys of his life. For all of his regrets, he has so many happy memories too, and by reminding him about those times, we can strengthen his Dragon of Dojima fighting style. When I first got into this part of the story, I spent about an hour just going to every single reminiscence spot and remembering all of these little moments throughout my playtime in the series. And you bet your ass I cried a little. The whole thing felt more like a memorial to Kiryu, this character that I relate to in so many different ways, and one of the only fictional characters who I genuinely catch myself looking up to from time to time. It's sad as hell. This is also how we unlock life links with his best friend and longest-standing ally, Date Makoto. Date sets up opportunities for Kiryu to check in on all of these people who he feels like he's wronged, people who he desperately wishes he could apologize to. And while Kiryu doesn't actually get to talk with them, and Date has to keep up the lie that Kiryu is dead, time and time again, all of these people who Kiryu is convinced had their lives ruined by him tell Date that they would do anything to be able to see Kiryu again and thank him for his sacrifices. Through Date's lifelinks and all of his reminiscing, Kiryu is able to return to full power by finally getting closure on all of the regrets that came with that lifetime of memories that I mentioned we've seen him through over the course of the series, and it's just beautiful. It's a way of celebrating all of our time with this character, and sort of pulling us away from the heroic, justified lens that these stories were originally told through. This is the only time that I've seen Kiryu's character progression being tied to something that's super relevant to the game's themes and narratives, rather than the hand-waving excuse of, oh, Kiryu stopped training and grew rusty for some reason. In this game, Kiryu's relative weakness at the beginning of the game all goes back to this huge character flaw that he's been ignoring for the entire series. A character flaw that so many people have tried to snap him out of. His inability to show his weak side to his loved ones for fear of hurting them or putting them in danger. After Nishiki, his sworn brother, betrayed him in Yakuza 1, Kiryu closed his weaknesses off to the whole world. But now he's opening them up again, and through doing this and allowing himself to get close to his party members and not refuse his help in the fight, Kiryu becomes more powerful than he's ever been before, at least in a way. The only problem is that he's still refusing treatment for his cancer. His stoicism has been ruining his life for about 28 years, and accepting treatment for his cancer is like the final boss for him getting past all of that stoicism. So, as we see Kiryu's half of the story to its conclusion, we find out that it's the Tojo clan's precedent of arranged marriages that caused the antagonist to hate the Yakuza so much, because he personally had his life ruined by one such marriage. So, he sees all of these ex-Yakuza members trying to live a normal civilian life after the events of the previous game, and says that they don't deserve that second chance. He rounds up all of the vagrant Yakuza in Kanto under the banner of a revived Seiryu clan, and plots to trap every last one of them on a remote island where escape is essentially impossible and death is inevitable. So, when we storm Millennium Tower as Kiryu at the end of this game and take down the final boss, Kiryu doesn't talk about how he's right in this situation. All that he can do is beg the antagonist for forgiveness. As the fourth chairman of the Tojo clan, Kiryu had the power to put a stop to the arranged marriages that ruined this guy's life and to fix so many of the other problems with the Yakuza. But he didn't. And so he feels that from the moment he became chairman to now, 18 years later, he's been indirectly responsible for all of the horrible things that the Yakuza have done. So, rather than being right at the end of this game, Kiryu is fighting tooth and nail for the opportunity to apologize to the antagonist and beg him to give all of those ex-Yakuza a second chance. A chance at atonement. The only reason that Kiryu got the opportunity to atone for his sins, and the sins of the Yakuza, is because finally, after 28 years, he learned how to accept the help of his friends. Our other protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga, is the one who taught him that lesson. See, Ichiban is described throughout both of the mainline games he appears in as a dumbass. This is because he routinely gets betrayed by his friends. It's happened so many times by the end of Infinite Wealth, but every time he just shakes their hand and says that all of the hanging out and bullshitting that they've done together just makes them friends. And even if it was all a scheme on the part of the other person, nothing will ever be able to take away from that. I'm sure I'm forgetting some of these betrayals here, but Nanaba was secretly using Ichiban to track down his long-lost brother and winds up joining sides with the Omi and Bleach Japan, the antagonists of Yakuza 7, the moment it helps him in his goals more than Ichiban was able to. But Ichiban forgives him. Saiko ghosted Ichiban for over a year after he proposed to her, but he forgives her. Chitose was spying on Ichiban's party for the antagonists of Infinite Wealth and was directly responsible for the wave of misinformation that led to Ichiban and all of his friends losing their jobs and becoming hated by the people of Yokohama. And she drugged him and stole his passport and all of his clothes so that he would be arrested at the beginning of the game. But Ichiban forgives her. Tomizawa literally mugged Ichiban at the start of the game, but he forgives him too. Eiji faked being paraplegic to gain Ichiban's sympathy so that he could help out the antagonists, and at the end of the game, Ichiban forgives him too. Time and time again, everyone calls Ichiban a complete dumbass for being so forgiving of people and seeing even the simplest of friendships as being so completely immutable and everlasting. But that forgiveness is what gives him his infinite wealth. See, I spent the whole game wondering why it was subtitled Infinite Wealth. The first Ichiban game had a major rags to riches theme, with Ichiban starting out homeless and eventually becoming a CEO and even a candidate for governor. I figured it'd be like that. Infinite Wealth was just a cute video gamey term for how much of a money focus the game would have, tying in nicely with how Ichiban sees his life as a video game. However, Infinite Wealth didn't have that same money focus that the last game had. Nothing we do in the game is as high-profile, capitalistic as what happens in Yakuza 7. Alright, maybe it's focused on the rat race of all the criminal syndicates in Hawaii trying to capture Akane simply for the sake of their bounty. And the lesson at the end of the game would then be something just like, even infinite wealth can't buy you happiness or something. Nope. Turns out the real infinite wealth was the friends we made along the way. Okay, well, that's kind of an oversimplification. The real infinite wealth is something that all of us have the power to do. Forgive people. There's no limit to the amount of second chances you can give someone, and there's no limit to the amount of second chances that you can give yourself. Ichiban's infinite wealth is his willingness to turn the other cheek and do whatever it takes to make sure that the people he cares about get their chance to atone for how they've wronged him and all the horrible things they've done. As long as you're willing to admit that you were wrong and commit yourself towards making things right, there's nothing that you can't heal past. As long as you're willing to admit that you were wrong and work towards making things right, you have infinite wealth. This would be the second time that a Yakuza game felt like it came to me at the absolute perfect time to just describe my life. The first was when I played Yakuza 5, but I'll probably write about that one in a couple videos from now. The last 8 or so months have required a lot of forgiveness from myself and from the people close to me. I've had to work through a bunch of trauma and distrust and feelings of betrayal, and only recently have I been able to rebuild some of the friendships that were lost along the way. It goes both ways, actually. A lot of the people I care about have had to forgive the shit out of me over the last year. I've just had to sit there day after day and tell everyone that I was wrong and that I'm sorry and that I'm working on getting better about all of this stuff, and just keep on doing it over and over again endlessly until eventually people started to believe me and we were all able to forgive each other. Everyone hated everyone because of what all happened, but through sheer persistence, we're finally friends again. Truth be told, this stuff is still a little bit too raw to get into on YouTube for now, but if you ever see me make another video on Planescape Torment or Silent Hill 2, the events of the last month will probably be the topics of those videos. Through sheer chance, right as I found myself on the other side of one of those mistakes and all of that anger, I got to watch Ichiban say to Aiji exactly what was being said to me and exactly what I was saying to those friends of mine a week or two earlier. You were a scumbag, but you can atone for it, and I'll be right here by your side until you do, helping you out every step of the way, just like you were for me. Kiryu, at the end of this game, has the same infinite wealth that Ichiban has. Having finally learned how to let other people into his life, and having finally learned that it's possible to forgive himself for all the people he's hurt in his life, he checks himself into chemotherapy, using his true name, and reunites with his family, ready to make up for all of the bad he's done, and ready to accept credit for all the good he's done. It's left vague how long Kiryu has to live at the end of Infinite Wealth, but what we see at the end of the game is the first steps towards happiness that Kiryu has taken in 15 years. Thanks for sticking with me.
Kiryu Kazuma.
Before I close out today's video and enjoy some much-earned mozzarella sticks and a milkshake, I would just like to go ahead and verbally thank the patrons, especially those who donate $10 or more monthly, such as Cinema Critic, Earl Grey, Edel Sis, Bree, Messina, Stephanie Starfire, Pumpkin, David Brohl, Alex, Issa, One-Eyed Wiley, Maddie Doman, Miss Lavender, Metamaniac, Ave Lunum, Boya, Delaney, Toma, DJ Jax, The Biggest of Men, Babylon Broken, The Narcissist Cookbook, Asiobatoon, Spooky Ina, Guybrush, Lin Payne, Mkoi, Cappy, Lake, Eva Knight, Panda, Mr. Kokoko, Gwen T, Erica, Shay Theus, Gab, Nomad Delilah Jester, Bjorb, Lily Leones, Maris, Fia, Sean Hamilton, Voiced Mute, Haunted Mystic, Kay, Rio, Laura M, Poof Donut, Atheist, Sylvian Pasco, Joannis, IW, Arda Aurelia, Vega Nelson, Demise, Mia Maple, Nicole, Ada Avery, George Rosenbaum, Neurofilter, The Coom Slayer, Summer Celine Garden at Midnight, David Kaiser, Almost Dead Again, and Darius Fazier. I went a little bit harder this week on my videos than I normally do. I say this week, but this took a while to make. As you can probably tell, the editing was a little bit more advanced than anything I've done pretty much ever. The whole screen-on-screen thing was a lot. Here's the thing, though. So these videos, the reason the borders are wider is that's the aspect ratio I use. It matches my ultra-wide monitor, and I just like how it looks. Only issue is the cutscenes and Infinite Wealth and every other Yakuza game mostly have these black bars on the sides if you play at that resolution, so they're the normal 1920 by 1080. And I didn't like the idea of showing footage with black bars in my video, and I sure didn't like the idea of cutting off the top and the bottom. So, I created an insane amount of work for myself by doing all these different television shots you saw throughout the video. It was a lot. But I don't know, that and a couple other like new things I did video editing wise with this video, I think I like enough that they might just become tropes for me. Things like the camera shake. I went a little overboard in a couple spots I feel like, but I think in general adding that camera shake to just the static talking head shots of me and my environments really adds to the immersion a little bit. But it's already been 3 minutes. I've got no reason to keep on talking. Have a great week. Thank you for watching. I will try to keep y'all updated on what's next. I don't know yet. We'll find out.